At the will reading, my father stood up and said he'd be accepting my inheritance on my behalf and giving it to my brother. Everyone turned to look at me. I hadn't even opened my mouth, and already they were writing me out. No one flinched, not my mom, not even my brother. I thought I was prepared for anything, but not that, not being erased in public with a smile. Then someone stood up across the room, calm, unshaken. It was my grandmother, and what she said next changed everything. Because the truth is, this wasn't just about money. It was about a girl who was always expected to stay silent, finally learning how to speak. And this time, they couldn't stop me. I always knew my family had favorites, but I didn't realize just how deeply it shaped me until years later. Growing up in the outskirts of Seattle, birthdays in the Cooper household were loud, messy, and uneven. When I turned 10, I got a homemade vanilla cake with lopsided frosting and a quick hug from Mom before she dashed off to help my younger brother, Logan, with his science project. 3 months later, Logan turned 7. That same backyard transformed into a carnival. I'm talking pony rides, popcorn machines, and a magician whose business card I still find stuffed in old drawers. Even back then, I told myself it was fine, that I was the older one, the mature one, the one who didn't need glitter or grand gestures to feel loved. But I remember standing at the kitchen window, fingers pressed against the glass, watching Logan blow out candles on a 3-tier cake while my parents clapped like it was the most brilliant thing they'd ever seen. I didn't envy the party. I envied the way they looked at him. School only made the gap more obvious. When I came home with straight A's, Dad would give me a nod and say, "That's what we expect from you, Hailey." No high five, no fridge magnets, just expectation. But when Logan scraped by with B's and a C in math, there were pizza nights, balloons, and proud Facebook posts tagged with, "He tries so hard." I joined every club I could, debate team, drama, yearbook. I stayed up late perfecting projects, not because I wanted medals, but because I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd see me. I called home with updates. "Mom, I made editor of the school paper." She'd respond, "That's great, honey. Oh, did you know Logan got picked as team captain for intramurals?" I told myself I was just being sensitive, that it wasn't favoritism, just different parenting styles. But deep down I knew. By the time I was 18 and heading off to college, the pattern was set. I didn't cry at the airport. Not because I wasn't scared, but because I'd already learned tears didn't get you much in our house unless they came from Logan. He stayed home after high school, took a gap year, then another. He said he needed time to figure things out. That meant gaming until 2 a.m. and applying to one startup internship every few months. My parents wired him money regularly. "He's trying," they'd say. "He just needs a little longer to launch." Meanwhile, when I asked for help buying a textbook I couldn't afford, Mom told me, "You always figure things out, Hailey. You're our rock." So I figured it out. I always did. I took the bus in the rain, worked part-time jobs between classes, taught myself how to budget down to the penny. I graduated on time, with honors and without debt, no rescue, no shortcuts. Still, no matter how hard I worked, it felt like I was invisible in the story of my own family. I thought maybe when I bought my first condo by 26, it would change. Maybe then they'd look at me like they looked at Logan's drone trophies. But when I invited them over, Mom barely looked around before saying, "This is nice, Hailey. You've always been so self-sufficient. We never worry about you." That wasn't a compliment. That was a dismissal, a permission slip to forget me. Logan still lived at home then, toying with his third startup idea. Dad was investing in it. "He just needs a little boost," he said, as if Logan were some stock they were determined to see rise. And me? I was already filed away in their minds as the one who didn't need them. A finished product. Useful. Complete. But what they didn't know was that silence, that independence they mistook for resilience. It was something else entirely. It was fuel. And one day I would use it. By the time I signed the papers on my one-bedroom condo, I thought I had made it. It wasn't glamorous, an old brick building with creaky floors and a leaky faucet, but it was mine. Every square foot had been paid for with late nights, freelance deadlines, and a budget spreadsheet so color-coded it looked like a rainbow exploded. I invited my parents over for a small housewarming, nothing fancy. I made coffee, set out store-bought cookies, lit a candle that smelled like fresh linen. I even rearranged my throw pillows 3 times, trying to make the place look important, like a space worthy of acknowledgement. When they arrived, Mom walked through the front door, took one glance and said, "This is nice." Then she added, almost like an afterthought, "You've always been so self-sufficient. We never worry about you." She smiled when she said it, but that smile carried the same weight as a locked door. That was the moment it hit me. They weren't proud of me. They were relieved by me. Relieved that I required no effort, no attention, no messy problems to fix. I wasn't a daughter, I was a closed tab. Meanwhile, Logan was in the middle of testing another startup idea, something about drone delivery for local bakeries. He had no business plan, no product, just a name and a logo, and yet Dad was helping him network with investors from his golf club. You know how it is with creative types, Dad chuckled. They need a little push. I sat there, holding a mug of coffee I no longer wanted, wondering if anyone had ever described me as creative, as someone worth pushing. The weekend of my senior showcase, I was one of only 3 students selected to present at the Northwest Design Expo. It was the biggest night of my career so far. I sent invitations, left voicemails, texted reminders. They didn't show. But that same night, they drove 4 hours to see Logan compete in a drone racing meet in Portland. He placed 4th. That night, I performed in front of strangers. The applause felt hollow. Afterward, I sat alone backstage, scrolling through my phone until a text popped up from Mom. Sorry we couldn't make it, sweetheart. Logan's drone almost came in 3rd. Isn't that exciting? I stared at that message until the screen dimmed. That was the moment I stopped performing for them. Not because I no longer wanted their pride, but because I realized I would never have it. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't need it to begin with. When Grandpa Walter passed away, I didn't cry at the funeral. Not because I didn't love him. I did, fiercely. But because grief had always been a private thing in our family, hushed, hidden, inconvenient. At the service, my parents sat beside Logan, whispering to him, rubbing his back. I sat alone in the row behind. When I stepped up to give a short eulogy, sharing how Grandpa had written me a birthday letter every year, Mom blinked like she couldn't recall. Maybe she really couldn't. 2 weeks later, I received a formal envelope from a law office. The will was being read on Thursday. All grandchildren named. That included me. I didn't expect much, but a fragile hope sat in my chest like a folded note. Maybe he remembered me. The day before the reading, another envelope arrived, from Grandma Margaret. In her looping script, she wrote, "Hailey, please come. Your grandfather made sure of something. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." That letter was weightier than the will notice. Grandma rarely intervened. If she was urging me to come, something mattered. The next day, I arrived at the law office in my best blazer. My parents were already seated. When I walked in, they glanced at each other. Dad smirked. Logan gave a small wave. I nodded back and sat down. The lawyer began reading. Grandpa had split his estate evenly among his children. Then came the grandchildren. When my name was mentioned with the phrase equal share, I saw Dad shift, his jaw tensed. And then he spoke. "Actually," he said, clearing his throat, "we'll be accepting Hailey's portion on her behalf. She's not concerned with these things." The room froze. I opened my mouth, stunned, but before I could speak, a voice rang out. "I think we should hear the rest first." "Grandma." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her tone sliced through the room like glass. The lawyer nodded and continued. When he repeated that Hailey Morgan Cooper was to receive an equal portion, independent, unassigned, my dad tried again. "Come on now," he said. "Hailey has a career, a condo, no debt. Logan is still building something. Grandpa would have wanted the money to go where it could grow." Mom added sweetly, "Hailey's always been so generous. She doesn't need this. Logan has vision." I clenched my hands in my lap. That word, generous, had always been code for give it away quietly. I looked at them and said calmly, clearly, "I don't need anyone to speak for me. I'm keeping what Grandpa left me." Dad glared. "This isn't about you, Hailey. It's about family." Mom chimed in, "Don't let pride cloud your judgment." It wasn't pride, it was self-worth. And for the first time, I wasn't shrinking to keep peace. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Legally, unless Hailey signs a waiver, her share is hers, entirely." Dad's face darkened. "We'll see about that." And then, like a final twist of the knife, he started listing every favor they'd ever done. Braces, a couch to sleep on during college, 1 semester of textbooks. "You owe us," he said. Mom added, softer, "If you loved us, you'd do what's right." I didn't speak, couldn't. Until Grandma reached over and held my hand. "You don't owe them anything," she whispered. "And your grandfather knew it." Right then I realized this wasn't about inheritance. It was about finally being allowed to exist. I didn't go home after the reading. I couldn't. Instead, I packed a duffel bag, turned off my phone, and drove east. 4 hours later, I arrived at the lake cabin tucked between a row of whispering pines. It hadn't changed in years. The same chipped railing, the same crooked welcome mat that read, "Make yourself at home." This was the place Grandpa taught me how to skip stones, where Grandma would sneak me cookies while telling stories about her rebellious college years. It was the only place in my entire childhood that felt unfiltered, unscripted, and somehow mine. When I stepped inside, the air was thick with dust and memory. I lit a fire, wrapped myself in an old wool blanket, and let the silence take over. It was a silence that didn't demand anything, a silence that healed. That night I didn't sleep. I watched the flames dance and flicker. I cried for the little girl who once begged for a smile. I cried for the woman who had finally said no. And I cried for Grandpa, the only one who'd ever made me feel seen without asking me to prove I deserved it. The next morning I opened the drawer of the guest room dresser. I don't know why, maybe habit, maybe intuition. There, tucked beneath a stack of faded postcards, was a white envelope with my name on it, in Grandpa's unmistakable blocky handwriting. I sat on the bed and opened it with trembling hands. Hailey, if you're reading this, it means the will has already been read, and I'm guessing things got messy. I want you to know, I saw everything. I saw the way they overlooked you, the way they handed Logan everything with ribbons while you built yourself from the ground up. This inheritance isn't a reward, it's recognition. You earned it every single day you got up and kept going, even when no one clapped. Don't let them take your voice from you again. Love always, Grandpa. I read it 3 times, then a 4th. I held that letter like a lifeline. It wasn't just ink on paper, it was proof. That I hadn't imagined it, that someone had noticed, that I mattered. Later that day, I called Grandma. She answered on the first ring. Did you find the letter? She asked, voice calm, almost knowing. Yes, I whispered, my throat tight. Thank you. She paused, then said, Your grandfather wanted you to understand. Love can be quiet, but it should never be invisible. He saw you, Hailey, always. Then she told me what I never expected. Months before Grandpa passed, my parents had tried to pressure him into rewriting the will. They argued that Logan needed it more, that I was already fine. They even suggested removing my name entirely. He refused. And not only did he refuse, he made sure their interference would have consequences. With the help of his lawyer and Grandma, he added a clause buried deep in the legal documents. It stated that any party who attempted to manipulate or redirect any beneficiary's portion would forfeit their own share. It was airtight, enforceable. And now, because of what they tried to pull during the reading, that clause had been triggered. Their inheritance was at risk. I sat in stunned silence as Grandma spoke. They're furious, she said. Your father claims you turned us all against him. I laughed, hollow, bitter. Of course he does, she continued, her voice steady. He's being removed as executor. The firm and I will handle everything from here. It's what your grandfather wanted, just in case. I sank into the couch. I hadn't realized I was standing. For the first time in my life, someone in this family didn't just say they supported me. They planned for it, protected me. I looked at the fire, still glowing low in the hearth, and finally breathed. This wasn't just about money. It was about finally being allowed to exist without having to earn it. And I wasn't going to hide anymore. It happened 3 nights after I returned from the cabin. I had just started to feel grounded again, cooking myself dinner, organizing my closet, walking to the bookstore down the street like it was any other week. But that night, just as I was about to wash my plate, someone knocked. Not a buzz from the intercom, a knock. I looked through the peephole. My father. Behind him, my mother stood, arms crossed, mascara streaked. He looked stiff, jaw clenched so tightly I thought his teeth might shatter. I opened the door, but only halfway. You planned all this, didn't you? He spat. Manipulated your grandmother, poisoned your grandfather against us. I didn't flinch. He made his own choices, and you made yours. Mom stepped forward. Hailey, don't do this. Just sign it over. Logan needs this. You don't. There it was again. The erasure. The expectation that I would disappear for someone else's sake. I looked her in the eyes and said it slowly, clearly. I needed a family for 29 years. I never got one. They both froze. And then Dad laughed. Dry, cruel. Well then, he said. I hope that inheritance keeps you warm, because after this, you don't have a family anymore. He turned, walked off. Mom lingered for a second longer, as if she might say something softer, but she didn't. She followed him down the hall. And for the first time, I didn't cry when they left. Because I realized something, I didn't lose a family that night. I lost people who had never truly chosen me to begin with. What I didn't expect was the knock that came 2 days later. It was Logan. Through the peephole, I saw him standing there, hands buried in the pockets of a faded hoodie, his posture unsure. I waited, 10 seconds, then opened the door. Can we talk? He asked, voice quiet. I nodded and stepped aside. He didn't sit, just stood in the center of my living room like he wasn't sure what counted as safe ground. I didn't know they were going to do that, he said, referring to the will reading. I didn't ask for it. But you didn't stop them either, I replied, calm. He flinched. I know, and I should have. Silence stretched between us. Then he pulled something from his jacket pocket, a folded letter. Grandma gave this to me, he said, after everything blew up. It was a letter from Grandpa, his handwriting unmistakable. It wasn't as kind as yours, Logan said, but it was honest. He swallowed. He told me that letting mom and dad define me had turned me into a shadow of myself, that I needed to grow up, stop letting people fight my battles, and apologize to the person I hurt most. His eyes met mine. I'm sorry, Hailey, for everything, for not speaking up, for standing by while they pushed you aside. I always knew, I just didn't want to deal with it. I didn't respond right away, not because I didn't believe him, but because it was the first time he had ever said the words. We sat, talked. About the birthday parties I never got, the science fair they missed, the showcase they skipped. He listened. Then unexpectedly he said something that cracked the air wide open. I'm going back to school. I blinked. What? With my share, he said. I'm enrolling at the community college nearby. I want to study software design, maybe finance after. I want to build something, not just coast. I didn't cry, but I did smile. That wasn't just a plan, that was a break in the pattern. I think Grandpa would be proud, I said. He nodded. I know he would. And then we did something we hadn't done since childhood. We hugged. Not out of obligation, but out of something real, something earned. It's been 6 months since the will reading. My parents haven't spoken to me. They cut off Logan too, blaming him for choosing sides. He says it still stings, but also feels lighter, like he can finally exhale. As for me, I've stopped looking at my phone, hoping for a message that won't come. I've stopped needing their validation like oxygen. Instead, I've been building something new. I used a portion of my inheritance to start a mentorship fund. It's small but mighty, focused on young women in underrepresented fields: tech, design, finance. Girls who were told to stay quiet while their brothers were praised for speaking up. Girls like me. I named it the Walter Morgan Initiative, after Grandpa. Every time I review an application or send out a welcome letter, I think about the words he left me. This isn't a reward, it's recognition. I'm also in therapy again, and this time, I'm not pretending everything is fine. Healing, I've learned, isn't neat. It's not a straight line. Some days I feel powerful. Other days, I feel like a 10-year-old with her nose against a window, watching someone else blow out the candles. But I'm learning to separate who I am from who I was told to be. Logan's thriving at school. He sends me screenshots of his grades, projects, even asked me to help him workshop a brand identity for a budgeting app he's developing. Sometimes I tease him, so now you're the nerd in the family. He laughs every time. We've started a new tradition, sibling Sundays. Once a month, no phones, no parents, just pancakes, long walks, card games, and conversation. It's something we never had growing up. Not because we didn't want it, but because we were too busy being cast in opposite roles. Now we're rewriting that script together. Grandma Margaret calls regularly. She always ends our calls the same way. You two are changing the story, don't stop now. And she's right. Because family isn't just blood, it's choice, it's boundaries, it's truth. For most of my life, I believed love meant silence. That to be strong was to shrink so someone else could shine. That the right thing to do was whatever caused the least friction. But not anymore. Now I know better. I didn't just inherit money. I inherited a voice. And for the first time in my life, I'm using it, with no apology, no permission, and no need to earn the right to be heard. I'm just beginning. And this time, I'm writing the story myself. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones who try to silence you the most. But silence is not strength, disappearing is not love, and shrinking yourself isn't loyalty, it's survival. If you've ever been made to feel invisible, unworthy, or too strong to need help, I hope Hailey's story reminds you of this. You don't have to earn your place. You don't have to keep proving you matter. You already do. And when you find your voice, no matter how long it's been taken from you, use it. Not to scream, not to fight, but to live fully, out loud, and on your own terms. If this story moved something in you, you're not alone. This is Sweet Revenge, Happy Ending, where pain becomes power and endings are written with truth. Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe, because somewhere out there, someone needs this story more than we know.